So, let's do some positional training. So these are positional problems from Ogred's book, Excelling at Positional Chess. Jacob Ogred is, of course, a very famous chess author, and he produces very good material. This is from Excelling at Positional Chess. Let us begin with the first problem. It is white to play. So whichever side we are facing, it is that side to move. And in this first problem, it is white to play. Let me just check that that is indeed the position. Yes, it is. White to move. Okay. So I guess let's begin by figuring out what's going on. Let's count the material. So currently, it's an endgame. Clearly, queens are off the board. Queens are off the board. We have 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 against 6. So white is down a pawn. And white has the possibility of playing bishop takes d6. So the obvious move is to just recapture the pawn on d6. I will move the pieces just for the sake of the audience. Now, for the sake of you guys, normally if I'd solve these, I wouldn't move the pieces. But it's not essential in positional exercises because we're not really training our calculation. You had a game against Nakamura in this line. Ooh, that's pretty cool. I think is this like a Slav line, Marshall? So, we can do this. We can reclaim the pawn. Now, the issue with that, is that I really like the bishop. Clearly, as we'll discuss in just a second, this bishop is incredibly strong, and I think it could be used in a much better way than given up for the sake of a pawn, for the sake of restoring material equality. Now, what exactly is black going to do? I feel like here, white is probably slightly better, but I'm not exactly sure. Let's say king e7, right? This attacks the rook. Now, let's say if white moves the rook, then black can just simply get his bishop out to d7. I really don't buy that white is any better at all, really. So I really don't buy that white is any better at all. If white goes c5 here to try to cement the rook, bishop d7 even here is fine. Or rook d8 forces the rook trade. So to me, I wouldn't say it's like a draw per se, but it looks like an equal endgame. And I feel like white is shooting for an advantage. Now let's take a look at the other possibilities. We can consciously refuse to take the pawn. We can move the bishop somewhere. The question is, where do we want to move the bishop? Let's try to evaluate the candidates. I see off the top of my head, two candidate moves for the bishop. One, as you guys are pointing out, is bishop b6. And this looks cool because it clamps down on the entire queen side, and the bishop seems pretty unassailable here. The other one seems to be bishop a3. So let's try to evaluate the pros and cons of these two moves and make a decision. I feel like it's going to be one of these two. Both of these, to be honest, seem better to me than bishop takes d6. I feel like white's contending for an advantage in both of these cases. Now, my intuition is telling me bishop a3, but I will give a fair trial to bishop b6. So what exactly is white's next move going to be here? Because eventually we do want to get to this pawn. I don't want to just play down a pawn, but we have a lot of possibilities. We can play bishop d3, we can play knight e4. I feel like bishop a3 is better from the perspective of winning this pawn, because now knight e4 is a pretty serious threat. Even g4 should be considered, but that's a pretty weakening move. So let's say bishop b6, and the advantage of bishop b6 is that this bishop is just ensconced on that square. It's very advanced, and it's on an outpost. Here's the one thing that worries me. The one thing that worries me about bishop b6 is, let's say black plays it simple, bishop d7. And let's say that we go knight e4 to try to, as we discussed, to try to take this pawn with the knight, and black goes king e7. Now, it seems to me that black is sort of getting out of... maybe you can play g4 here, honestly. This does look pretty good for white. And then you take on d6. This does look very, very good for white. I agree. But I have a sense that black can somehow consolidate here. Black could also potentially castle, although that doesn't solve the problem with the pawn. But yeah, g4 chases the knight away, and then we take the pawn. The great thing about putting the bishop on b6 is that it covers the d8 square. It makes it impossible for black to ultimately put his rook on d8. So with bishop a3, black also has control of the d4 square. So let's take a look at bishop a3. Bishop a3, I don't really envision black playing anything other than let's say bishop d7. And, here we can play perhaps knight e4 as well. And, this also seems good. I feel like these moves are pretty similar in value, but I am starting to like the move bishop b6, because here Yeah, but rook d8, once again, black can play g4. But maybe black can play h5 here in order to prevent g4. And if you play knight takes d6, takes, this is playable for black. I feel like this is playable. I would love for the bishop to be on b6 now to control that square. So let's go with bishop b6. I think bishop b6 is the better long-term decision. Although something actually tells me that maybe knight e5 is a good defensive resource for black. But even here, like knight e4, knight d7, bishop c7. And black is just so cramped here. So I like the move bishop b6. Let's check out the solution. And let's read Agard's explanation, shall we?